Maru getting a very swift 1-0 here, showing a very good build and innovation. I mean, it did kind of start with the Reaper, really. The momentum was already in Maru's favor. Will innovation change things up coming into game number 2? And speaking of them, in the bottom right of Nightshade, we have the Red Terran innovation.
And spawning over in the top left side, and he's bringing the heat in this series already. It is Maru.
I don't want to say this is the most important match for either one of them. As I said, this might just determine who makes it first in the group as opposed to second, or maybe they start struggling to make third. But it is worth noting that Maru did have some trouble in the last Katowice, where he barely did not make it out of the group. He was fourth, I believe. So, I mean, and we saw yesterday, these things can very quickly spiral out of control.
Oh, they certainly can. Like, both these guys went out at last Katowice, actually, and it was two of the guys that we were really hoping did well in that rather bad era of Terran. But here, it's nice to see that so far, they're both doing well, and they're both likely to make it out of the group, given that they're 3-0 and 2-1 scores. But this could definitely make the group a little more difficult for the other players.
Yeah, I mean, considering everyone else is like 1-2, and those other matches are happening on other streams, guys. So you can keep more up to date with the scores than we can. But, I mean, yeah, it can just get a little wonky. If Innovation were to grab this one, I think he's for sure going on ahead. But Maru's looking to give him a run for that first place title. The factory expand for both players this time on Nightshade. So either Innovation feeling like he wants to get something in return, or just wants to actually use this a bit defensively.
It's kind of cool to see how builds change over time as well. So Maru continues to scout with his opening with the double gas, which obviously he did that last time as well. But normally the SCV indicates that you're going for the Reaper expand build. So Innovation, even though we get scouted, he knows that his opponent can play a little bit tricky, a little bit mind-gamey. And back at home, both of them took off 3 SCVs off the gas, 2 on one, 1 on the other. And that's kind of because if you have 2 SCVs on gas, you kind of get like 40% income from each one. So it's like 40%, 40%, so full 80. Rather than having 3 guys on just 1 gas, you actually get more from having 2 on one and 1 on the other.
I think everyone's asked that question, you know, like why not just 3 and 0?
Yeah, no, you actually get more from the 2 and the 1. So it's just the little things do matter at this level of play. Both of them opting to do that with the gas. So that means they get their CC up a little bit faster, given that they're mining more minerals, and they delay the starport a tad. Now, we do have a little bit of variation, I think, with the add-ons that they're both choosing. Maru opting to get those add-ons very quickly, whereas Innovation kind of playing a little bit safer here, in which he's going to get out more units a little bit quicker.
I mean, when you do that, though, you are almost obligated to actually try and use them offensively, even if the idea maybe at first was to protect yourself. So, I mean, Maru, I believe in his micro. I'm not actually too worried, but Nightshade is one of the smaller maps we have. It can very quickly get across the map and surprise you just before something's ready to go. But Cyclone first from Maru is a very safe call.
It certainly is. And getting those 5 units out, how much has Innovation actually scouted on this map? Because as far as I know, he's
not at all.
incredibly defensive. Like, that first game shocked him a little bit. He's like, okay, what's going to come up the ramp? I love the fact that he's defending this left side, by the way, because of the possibility of Reapers jumping into the main base. Whereas if you just defend the top and that happens, it's like, gosh, why was I defending down here in the first place anyway? 3rd gas timings by both these players, a Cyclone follow-up for Innovation now as well, and ooh, Cloak Banshee by Maru. That's interesting considering everybody kind of gets a Raven.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason that Banshees have fallen out of favor. I mean, when Legacy of the Void was first released, it was actually crazy stupid. People just go Banshees and who killed more workers. But then, you know, the Raven got more and more important over time.
Zombie Grub, I love this. He's got a Hellion here to see when the army goes across the map, and then he's like, oh, maybe now I can use my Reapers, but maybe that Hellion didn't stay alive for long enough time to do that. Maybe he's got like a timing in his head in which it's perfect for the Reapers to try and get a good scout in. We do have tanks joining the field for Maru with the Banshee, and a pretty darn early 3rd for Innovation.
Yeah. But that Banshee, I mean, it's very, very hard countered, I would use the word, if the Raven and Cyclone are in position. But Maru might looking to distract with the Reapers as he pushes through the middle of the map. I mean, that would be a very weird push. Or rather, for the Banshees, I should say.
I think this is going to be mech from Innovation, like Tom was talking about. Like, having the 4 gases before any of, like, getting an extra few barracks and stuff, it definitely is indicative of mech. And the fact that he doesn't have a reactor on this barracks already for producing, and look at this. Just with one of his Reapers, by the way, he does this. He goes into the main base, gets to see when the third is going down, even gets a little SCV pick off here.
I wonder if he's checking if the Banshee is a potentially clear zone. I mean, it's very likely the Banshee dies, and by the way, that's scanned pretty well timed, as the other Banshee, I think, is waiting. Yeah, if it's locked on once, it is very likely to die unless you kind of, like, you know, make sure you're careful around the edges of the minerals. But he's going to send them both at the same time. He could grab a few SCVs. Is it better, though, than having as many Ravens Innovation is building is kind of also the question we have to ask. And I guess we'll find out. But Maru is going into that stim where Innovation does slap down that second factory. This is the map that I've last seen mech on for TvT.
It is a nice setup because all the four bases you can take initially are pretty darn close together. And if you have turrets at your natural kind of thing, obviously getting into the main base is pretty hard if you take this kind of triangular setup, which that makes it very nice for mech, given that getting Doom dropped isn't really a kind of losing ability here. But yeah, just looking at the way that both these guys are playing, I love Innovation's setup so far. He's getting the turrets, he's getting the tanks and the Vikings, he's got a few Ravens out, and he's got a faster third base. Usually one of the things you want to do as a bio player, which he has seen now, is identify it early, because then you know you can pile on a bit of pressure and what trades you can or can't take.
Yeah, the pacing gets very different. You do add on tech labs as well for Marauders, so the composition changes too, but the pacing is certainly very different. And both of them grabbing double upgrades. Staying on that seems like a mistake, staying on the orbital for Maru, but we'll ignore that. The Banshee's still not doing very much. I wonder what told him not to use it, because he didn't actually get the Reaper in until the second Banshee I felt was scanned. Okay, so he just won't even use them. I mean, they'll be able to distract, maybe stop a fourth base for a while if it's like greedily taken on location, but that was an odd opener not to try and use at all.
I think it was a lot about the fact that he got scanned and he just respects his opponent so much.
But that was the second Banshee. The first Banshee had just gone to the top right and then it stayed there.
Do you know what it also could be?
What?
Like, if you go against a mech player and you get air control, and normally you rely on Liberators and stuff to kind of like, if you have those Banshees and keep them alive for doing a push kind of thing, because he's definitely committed to this kind of air control, so maybe utilizing these Banshees for a push, that could be really cool and very patient play as well.
Yeah, I mean, that actually works against even non-mech players, right? Because if they get one tank snipe, then suddenly it does change it, mech or bio. That's very cool of Maru, because I think otherwise they were not going to do a whole lot, but maybe here they can. Triple Raven from Innovation. That's what he was pumping out while Maru was getting these Banshees. We'll see which one ended up being better.
Oh, those tanks went a little bit too close there. These Banshees, he tried. We saw the idea being made to happen, but Innovation so far, he is impregnable. Like, this defense of his is so well set up, and that tank line, like, you can't get into the natural, you can't attack the third, and having these Ravens stay alive as well with so much energy, just trying to bust through this is going to be ridiculously difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Maru just going to take the high ground here, continuing producing barracks. Not particularly fast. Fourth CC just wants to keep the pressure on Innovation so he also doesn't feel comfortable. But Cyclones are now out trying to grab any of the air that he can. Looks like he might grab that Banshee now. It's going to barely get out. Oh, that was very, very close. But the rest of the air army from Innovation, his actual air army, Vikings and Ravens, is quite intimidating. That's actually 3 full energy Ravens in just a couple seconds here.
This is when it gets very scary for a bio player. Like,
right?
Now I'm looking at this, thinking, I've been in this situation before, and it didn't end too well for me when I was in this kind of shape. So I'm curious as to what Maru's going to do exactly. He's putting out Marines, Marauders, Vikings, double starport.
Yeah.
There we go. You can't just let the mech Terran build up, because he's going to have a better ground army than you. So seeing this kind of transition, I'm curious as to whether he's just going to say, okay, I'm going to get so many Vikings out, or whether he's going to go for an early fusion core as well.
Ooh, wow. Imagine that game, man. Imagine that game where it's Battlecruiser versus Battlecruiser. 40 minutes. We could definitely use one of those games, because some of these other series have been kind of fast.
Liberators are also super good, actually, for those fights. Like, I know the anti-air damage isn't that great against, like, a cluster of Vikings and such. Yeah. That's a nice scan, by the way. Like, Innovation's been really on point with his scan, so now he knows, like, oh, I'm against a guy that's transitioning to triple starport, am I? By the way, how often do you get a mech player that's not only, like, ahead in CCs of his opponent, but also ahead in upgrades?
Right, yeah. The mid-game is so important for the bio player, like the early to mid-game, to try and get those leads. You're supposed to have more expansions. You're supposed to have better upgrades. You're supposed to have, at some point, a bigger army that you're trying to pull and push the the mech player around, but this has actually kind of been a passive game. Maru has seen no openings from Innovation, and Innovation is getting to the better army and is accommodating correctly for whatever tech swap Maru might be throwing out here, which it is those starports have been used to produce just Vikings. He wants to get that edge, but then if he's going to do that, then I do think you also need to get the fusion core for those Liberators that you should also be getting, as that was moved off a tech lab. You can now do 6 times air units if you want.
Innovation Hellbat drops. Is this like 2015 again when he was doing this with like the 4 Hellbats? But in 2 bases, this is very gnarly because as a bio player, you don't want to really be affording any economic loss. And oh no, the SCVs in the main base aren't reacting at all, and that SCV kill number is growing rapidly.
Yeah. Oh man, that was not that great for Maru, who already, just like, and I'm gonna let my bias actually leak through here as well. But like the situation of the bio player, it just feels like you're just already so far behind, and then you lose 19 more SCVs. Like your plan of surprise is no longer going to be a surprise, and you got to figure Innovation knows exactly what to do against this. And it might be like, well, the good news is Thors aren't actually that great if he goes back on a bio, right? Thors really are not that bad, especially because they're going to be so well upgraded, as Maru's upgrades were, I mean, they're kind of late, and they're also a bit mistimed.
I'm very impressed by Innovation's defense and the fact that he has stayed ahead so hard in terms of like not taking damage and what have you. And this Air Force is very, very strong. Such patient play. And once he hit like the 150, 160 supply mark, he was like, okay, now it's Thors and only Thors, even going up to 8 factories at this point and still getting little bits of damage done against Maru with the Hellions like this. You can't allow this to happen. He even sees the orbital command here as well, by the way, so he knows that later on he can continue to send Hellions over here.
Yeah, exactly. Very bold move. Probably a move that Maru had to take, but 16 more SCVs puts him down by 13. He might get a bigger army, but he is replacing them. He has gotten into Liberator production. He has a fusion core for the Lib range as well, but it does get tricky against those Thors, you know? Like, and just, oh my gosh, the air army of Innovation started rather big, and it's still pretty big. 20 Vikings to 18, but then the 3 Ravens untouched throughout this entire game.
6 Thors. I mean, do you want them in anti-air mode? In fact, when you have that many, you can like absolutely mix them up to the big shot or the splashdown and just making the life of Maru even harder. But Maru's economy has definitely been, well, it's not where he wants it at all. At this point, as a bio play, you want to have a little bit of map control, and you want to be throwing down way more CCs just to get that little bit of an edge there. And we can't forget, given that Maru, or rather Innovation, is playing mech here, those upgrades for his air units are also going to be significantly better than his opponent. This is a rough spot to be in. Yeah,
ideally Maru's at a really great economy to actually get double upgrades himself, but not going to happen. Interference Matrix taking out some of Maru's tanks, and anti-air missile just blanketing the Vikings of Maru, but those Thors, I believe they're in single target mode right now, are crushing through the air, crushing through the ground, and Maru has dipped significantly in supply.
Wow, Innovation cut through that army very, very easily there. He's still very close to maxed out. He's got 4 bases. In fact, is that a 5th base on the right side as well? No, just a barracks floating around. But now he's like throwing down way more units. That's 3 tanks, 2 Thors, 2 Vikings, 2 Hellions at a time, and 3-3 is getting close. Maru has to slow this down somehow. But how do you slow it down? Maru runs in with a large concave. He's actually taken out quite a few of the Thors in the front line. But those tanks at the back are dealing so much damage, and Innovation ties up the series here.